It says we're live, so I guess we are. Hello, everyone, and I'm so glad that you've joined us today. Rhys Bowen is here, and very excited to have a chat with this wonderful woman and talented author. And I know that many of you, like me, have just finished reading her newly released The Venice Sketchbook. So we'll talk a lot about that. Yes, and the hardcover is very special. I have mine, of course, on my phone, digital reader that I am.
Yeah.
And before we get started, I just want to say that, I'm sitting in today for Annie McDonald, who really, really wanted to be here with you, Rhys.
Yeah.
And
yes,
absolutely, we do. And she was going to try and watch.
Yeah.
And we hope that she's feeling better soon. And of course, this is going to be on the World of the Right Review and also the Right Review. And for people who can't stay with us for the chat now, they'll be able to go back and see the video anytime they want to. Now, I think I have comments. Oh, okay. Yep. Okay. The comments are on. That's great. So lovely to see some people here already. Hi, Dara Levin and Grace Salmon. Wonderful to know that you're with us today. And remember, for people who are watching, go into that StreamYard link and give them permission to use your name. Otherwise, all we see is Facebook user when you make a comment. And so if you don't want to give StreamYard your name, just say in your comment who you are so we know. So anyway, well, let's get started. As they say, the Venice Sketchbook, Rhys, congratulations on your latest release.
Thank you.
It's just wonderful. I just devoured it this week. And, being familiar with Venice made it even more special to me. I just knew where the characters were as they walked and fell in the water and all sorts of other things. But for people, for people who've never been to Venice, it's, a wonderful opportunity for them to feel that they're getting to know that very special town. So maybe we could start by having you tell me or tell us why you decided to write this story, and also about your fabulous history with that part of the world.
Well, yeah, my connections to Venice go back to my early childhood. My aunt was a great Italiophile. She was rather like Aunt Hortensia in the book, very prim and proper British spinster. I know once she took me around Italy when I was about 16. And we were in Rome, and after dinner I said, "Oh, let's go out." And she said, "A lady never goes out after dinner unaccompanied." So that was that, I had to look out of the window. So every Easter she went to Venice, and she always stayed at the Pensione Accademia, and she would say, "There's only one place to stay in Italy, and it's the Pensione Accademia. Because it has a garden, and when one has been walking around and one is very hot, one can sit in the shade and they will bring you a citron pressé." So I'd always wanted to stay in the Pensione Accademia, and by the time I looked, it was much more expensive than when my aunt stayed there. But then last year, 2 years ago now, when I was doing the research for this book, I thought, well, I'm going to stay there. So we bit the bullet and stayed there, and it really was lovely. It's next to the Accademia, so it's across from all the hustle and bustle of St. Mark's. Mm-hmm. And it's on a canal that opens to the Grand Canal, and it does have a beautiful garden. And you'd sit there every morning and have breakfast in the shade, and they'd bring you these. So it really was lovely. But anyway, so that when I was a teenager, I found myself thinking, why does she go to Venice every Easter? What if she meets somebody there? What if we don't know and she has this secret love affair going on there? So I suppose that was the spark for the story years ago. And then my own connection to Venice. My aunt had kept on about it so much that one year my parents rented a little villa just outside Venice in Treviso. And every morning we'd drive into the parking garage, and they'd give my brother and me some money and say, "See you at 5 o'clock." And we'd be free to wander around. Can you imagine doing that with your kids today? No cell phones, nothing. They just assumed we'd be at the parking garage at 5 o'clock, and we were.
And you'd be absolutely fine.
Yeah, my brother and I, we went through, we played in the giardini, you know, the lovely gardens, and we went across to the Lido and swam, and we found out where the best gelato was. So we had a fabulous time. And years later, I took my own oldest daughter when she graduated from high school, and hadn't been back since, and was walking around, and I'd go, wait. We went through that little alleyway and under that arch, and my daughter would say, you can't go through somebody's backyard. And I'd say, you just wait. And we'd go through, and I'd go, I think you come out to, you do. And so I was right, you know, like all those memories were coming back. So I've been back many times since. But what really spurred me to write the story after all these germs were floating around was 2 or 3 years ago, we were in Venice, and the Biennale, the big outdoor art festival, was going on. And I bought a book that had the history of the Biennale in it. And I saw that it had been held in 1940 and 1942. And I thought, the world was at war. Who went? I mean, by 1942, Italy and Germany were alone. They didn't have any other allies. Was it just Italy and Germany who had this giant international festival? So I thought that was really strange. And I thought Venice had this love of art that even a war could not squash. So I thought setting a book in Venice in the war would be such an interesting thing to do. And then my aunt's story of perhaps she met somebody came back, you know?
Well, I mean, and that was a fascinating aspect to learn how things were in Venice during the war. I was not aware of that situation at all. And it made perfect sense when you explained it, but I'm sure it'll be a surprise to most readers. And I just want to interrupt for a second because Annie has joined us. She's here.
Hi, Annie.
So we're delighted that you're watching, Annie, and hope you're having a decent day. That's great. Yes, so, you know, that's really fantastic that your own aunt had that connection and kind of sowed the seed for the story that you developed, because I was relating the story to my husband this morning, and, you know, he said, that's really great. He said, that would make a great movie.
Yeah, and movie people, a great movie, okay?
Yeah, and I think it would. So if you could just kind of give us an idea of your process when you were developing the story. How much time did you spend in Venice researching, and what did that entail?
Well, when I write a book, I have an idea, sort of the germ of an idea ahead of time. And then I have to I start doing my primary research. So, you know, I read ahead of time, and I have to go to the place and just get the feel again of what makes this place different from anywhere else. You know, Venice. And a lot of the research was literally just walking the streets. I knew that my heroine was going to walk. What do you see here? You know, where's the canal? Where's there a path beside the canal? And things like, you notice in the early morning, a little boat will chug along and it will stop beside a building, and a basket will be lowered down from the 4th floor. Yeah. And they'll put a loaf of bread and a newspaper, and then the basket will be pulled up again. That's something so completely uniquely Venetian, you know. And so a lot of the research was literally just for finding the perfect house where she would have her apartment. So we took some time walking and actually going up that canal, the Giudica Canal, going up that by Vaporetto and looking from farther away, saying which one would have the best view, etc. So choosing her house, and then of course one has to do a lot of research on the food to remind oneself what food is uniquely Venetian. That's
of course, that's essential.
Really grueling part of the research, you know. I really did some serious research for this because I didn't know that much about. All I knew about Venice in World War II, apart from the fact that they'd held the Biennale, was that both sides had agreed not to bomb them. It was a pact not to bomb. And so the city was kept intact, which was wonderful. So I went to the library in the Korea Museum which is in St. Mark's Square, and I told them what I was doing. And I have my card that says New York Times best-selling author, so that does carry a little bit of weight.
Yes.
And so 2 librarians sat me in this little room, and they kept bringing books. And they kept bringing more books and more books till there's this bastion of books all around me. Now, of course, they're all in Italian, which I read but slowly. And they're all about this thick. And, after about an hour, I had to say, you're so kind. And I really think I have enough material here now. So what I did was to go sort of flick through, find the pages I thought would be useful to me. I said I wanted to know about Italy and Venice in the 1930s, and I wanted to know about the treatment of Jews in Venice, and I wanted to know about Venice after the Germans invaded. So they brought me all these books, and I'd find the pages I wanted. I'd pass them across to my husband, who would then photograph them all, so that then when I was at home and I had more time to read, I could actually go through and get everything that I needed. But spent a long day in the Korea Museum going through book after book after book. So, because, if you're writing, as if you're writing about historical place and time, it has to be accurate.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I was reading other books on Venice just recently, and I read one and went, no, that wasn't right. No, it wasn't that bridge at all, So, if you get something that's wrong, it's just really annoying. So I have to make sure if my heroine walked somewhere, I walked that route. And how long does it take to get from her apartment over to the little traghetto, which is the little gondola that takes you across the canal? And, so things like this. And when there is the flood, when there's the acqua alta, what goes underwater and what doesn't. So lots of little petty research before I start to write. And then when I actually write, I do 2 books a year. So I'm quite busy always.
You are a busy lady.
So I start to write, and I write every day until I have a first draft. And that really means, normally Saturdays and Sundays too, unless there's something really happening on one of those days. And I make myself do 5 pages a day. I can't leave till I've done about 1,500 words.
Good for you.
Some days that's really easy, and I zoom ahead and I probably do 8 pages. Other days, as you know, you get up, you walk around, you make a cup of coffee, you throw something in the washing machine, you go out in the garden and pick the dead heads off the roses.
Yes.
Anything rather than write. But if you know you can't leave until those pages are done, you do them. And then at the end of the day, I say to myself, this is rubbish. This is absolute rubbish. And then the next day, the first thing I do is read it through. And then I go, oh, well, this wasn't quite so bad as I thought. So, that's how the whole first draft goes.
Exactly. We just dump everything in, right?
At the end of the first draft, I give it to people to read whose opinion I value.
Yes.
And then I take what they've said. And then I go through and do a complete polish and re-edit. And then it goes off to our joint editor. So, that's how it works.
It's a very effective process. I think you're absolutely right that you have to set yourself a goal each day. And no matter what happens, no matter how much you procrastinate, you can't go to bed until you've got that finished.
Well, that's true, because if you had days when you'd say, oh, the muse isn't coming today, I always like what Robert B. Parker said once. He said, if you call a plumber in and he takes your sink to pieces and he lays out all the pieces and he says, I'm sorry, I can't go on. I have plumber's block today. If you're a professional writer, you have to write. And it's my job to sit there every day and write. And some days are not going to be easy. You know yourself, you get to a part of the book where it's really exciting and you can't wait to go on. And then you get to a part of the book where something in the background needs to be set, or there's a transition, or, that sort of thing, especially when I'm writing a mystery novel, when she's finding clues. Sometimes it's not as exciting, but it has to be done. And I find too, if I'm not excited about it, the reader's not going to be.
Yes.
So all those things I'm bored with, they have to go. Because if I'm bored, the reader will certainly be bored.
Precisely. And do you find when you're writing your those really emotional parts that you're crying while you're writing, and you know that, or you hope that your reader is going to have that same emotion as they read those words?
Oh, absolutely. You know, of course, with this book, there's a part that's really harrowing. I'm not going to tell you what it is because you have to read.
Yes.
But I knew it was coming, and I kept thinking perhaps there's another way around this. And I thought, no, there is no other way around it. We're going to make some very horrible decisions here, which are going to really hurt me and going to hurt everybody, but they have to be made. So we get closer and closer to it, you know, like, don't get on that train in the morning, please, don't do it. But she does, you know. So, you know, there are things, and it's funny because I've just finished the first draft of the next book, and I was reading it through to myself before it went out to any of my beta readers. And I came downstairs and John said, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, "Oh, I've been crying." It's really sad. So yeah, if your books don't make you cry, they're not going to make anybody else cry.
Exactly. And also, you know, one of the things that really amazes me about your versatility as a writer, because with over 40 books, over 40 novels published worldwide in many, many languages, you have such a variety of genres too. I mean, it's not just women's fiction, right? You've got your mystery series, and the way you approach those must be quite different from the way you approach your standalone women's fiction books. Am I right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what I like is I don't like to be bored. And I think if I were just doing one series, I could do it quite well. You know, because you know everything, you know where you start. But I think, oh God, I got to do another of those. And that wouldn't be right. So I've been doing, you know, I was doing the Molly Murphy mysteries, which take place in early 1900s New York City and are very much about the immigrant experience, quite gritty in many ways. You know, some of those stories are not easy. And then I do the Royal Spinist series, which is light, and it's about minor royals in 1930s England. So we have lots of real people, Mrs. Simpson, the Prince of Wales, Noel Coward, all come across the pages. And they're really fun to write. They're you know, they're meant to be funny. They're meant to be light. You've got this, I think in all of my books, they're very much tied to reality. So you have the underpinnings of the fact that these are the 1930s. There's the Great Depression. There are people who are out of work. In the background, we see the growing influence of Hitler in Germany. And we know that Georgie's mother lives in Germany. So we've got those little frissons in the background. But essentially, you're meant to laugh at these. You're meant to laugh at silly English customs and the class system, which is so ridiculous. So I love writing those. They're very therapeutic. I sit at my computer and I call out to John, "Hey, listen to what Queenie just said. She's the maid who nobody would want." So things like that really are delightful to do. But it keeps you on your toes, because when I'm doing that, I think, oh, I'm waiting to get to that next big standalone and that big, you know, tense scene in Nazi Germany, you know. So I think, you know, this is very good for my psyche, that I'm doing some things that are fun, some things that are very difficult, and it keeps me on my toes, and it makes me look forward all the time.
Well, and it certainly expands your readership as well.
It does,
because you're touching the interests of so many different readers. But to be able to write something that's so funny on the one hand, and then on the other hand, you know, getting into such serious matters and all the history that you build in. I mean, you are a very versatile lady.
Well, I guess so. As I say, I know what I like to. I think every book, I don't know about you, but every book I've written is a book that I wanted to read and it wasn't on the shelf. So I took, you know, I had to write it myself. I love the sort of, I like P.G. Wodehouse, and, you know, I loved all of the ladies of the Golden Age mysteries. And so I sort of put the two together. But the British class system is so funny. And I think because I live in America, and obviously I'm British, when I'm there, I'm very much the observer, and I notice all the ridiculous things which still happen. You know, my
Sure.
husband is from a British aristocratic family. His sister is married to a Vivian in Cornwall, and the cousin is Sir Ferrers Vivian. Now, can you get more
My
aristocratic?
goodness.
So
Wow.
I stay at Merthyr Manor every summer. And, you know, over the years, I've listened to these stories of, do you remember that joke we played on the butler? This is all great in the book. And we have cousins with the funny nicknames. That's what I love too. We have two cousins who are called Fig and Dude. I'm sorry, Fig, I borrowed your name. And we also have a cousin who reminds me I have to write to her today, called Puff. And now Puff is this very distinguished old lady called Lady Virginia, but she's to the family, she's Puff. So, you know, all these things are really fun, and I love writing about them. There's just it intrigues me that in spite of everything, the British class system is still there, simmering in the background.
Yes, it certainly is.
Yeah, we had I was at a sherry party in the Cotswolds, which is quite a snooty area, and the hostess said, "My dears, you'll never guess who's just bought that house across the valley." And everybody leaned forward and said, "Do tell." And she said, "My dears, he's a grocer." And everybody went, "Oh."
Shocking.
And the point is, if he'd owned Safeway, he'd still be a grocer to them. So, you know, the British house is really alive and well, and it's delightful to write about. So I just find those books, there's so many fun things. And of course, the 1930s, what a fantastic time to write about too, isn't it? You know,
Absolutely.
You've got the struggle between communism and fascism. You've got people who are out of work standing in a bread line, and you've got people who are on the Mediterranean in someone's yacht drinking champagne from a slipper. So you've got, you know, this complete dichotomy to write about too. So I like to be interested I like to learn things when I write a book too.
Mm-hmm.
I write a book, I like to do a little bit of research, and, you know, I've had Coco Chanel in a book, and all sorts of sort of fun, real people come onto the pages. So that's fun too. But that's
what makes it so much fun for us all to read. I have a couple of questions here for you, Rhys, and Annie is asking, when did you realize you wanted to write, especially historical fiction?
Well, I've been a writer actually all my life. I literally, apparently my mother said I wrote a poem when I was 4, so I have to believe her. And I wrote stories for myself, and growing up, I really wanted to be a movie star. So I wrote my own scripts in my teens. I wrote several scripts for myself in which I was the heroine in this terribly tragic movie in which everybody dies at the end. But then I thought I was going to be a journalist. And in college, I edited the college newspaper. And then I think what really tipped this was I went to see the movie La Dolce Vita. And it's there's a scene in which a man has killed his children and himself. And his wife comes back from a shopping trip, and there's paparazzi all around the house. And she doesn't know why they're there. And she acts like a movie star, like, "Oh, you want to speak to me?" Not knowing that her husband and children are dead inside.
Oh, dear.
And I thought, I can never do that. I can never go up to someone with a microphone and say, "How did it feel when you found that your family was murdered?" So I went into the BBC instead, and I was in BBC drama, and that was fabulous. That was the most wonderful experience. And I started writing my own plays. And so I wrote a play, and with the bravado of a 22-year-old, I walked down the hall to the head of drama, and I said, "I've written a play." And a few days later, he called me in and said, "Yes, we really like this. We're going to do it." So,
wow,
that was my first professional work, and I've been published ever since. I've moved from. I was lured down to Australia by Australian television, and then I met my husband, who was on his way to California. And it was only when I got to California, and there was nothing similar to my life in the BBC, that I started writing children's books, then young adult books, then some historical. And then finally I said to myself, it was when I discovered Tony Hillerman.
Okay.
And, you know, you wouldn't have thought that a man who writes about Native Americans in the Southwest would have touched me in that way.
Right.
but I saw that he took me somewhere. He opened my eyes to another culture, and he made me feel I was in that place. And I thought, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I started writing my own mysteries. And the first series was The Constable Evans, which is contemporary and set in Wales, which I know very well because my mother's family is Welsh. And then I moved on to the Molly Murphy books. And then I added the Royal Spinist. So I was, been doing all these. But every time I write something, I think the time and the place are really what drive all of those books, because I love to be taken somewhere. I don't want ever people to read when they're reading my books, oh, thank you for telling me about Venice in 1938. That was really interesting. I want you to say, oh my God, I'm in Venice and the Nazis are coming. That's what, that's what I want you to feel.
Mm-hmm. And you do definitely feel that. There's no question. And you're right, as a writer, and for those of us who use location so much as a big part of our story, as a character almost, really, it is really satisfying to hear from readers that they felt like they were there. One of my favorite emails was from a woman who lives on a farm in the middle of Iowa. And she said, thank you for taking me somewhere that I know I'll never go in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And that really, I've never forgotten that.
Have you had lots of emails during this year? I've had so many saying, thank you for keeping me sane during the pandemic. I've reread all of your Royal Spinist series, or I've read The Tuscan Child again.
Yes.
Because I've been stuck in this little room and I just needed to escape somewhere, and you've taken me somewhere. And that,
exactly.
that feels rather humbling and rather good.
Absolutely. Both of those feelings, for sure. I know this year it's been a struggle to write in a way that it never has been before. And I found even something as simple as my monthly newsletters, which are usually very positive, and I'm usually just going to France or just coming back from France, and so I'm talking about that and always sharing photos, and all of a sudden I'd sit down to do my newsletter and I couldn't write anything. I had to skip a couple of them. And I explained, and when I did get back to it, that I just didn't know what to say. And so then I did for a while just talk about all the shocking situations that people are facing, and how we have to try and be positive and help each other, and all of that. And I couldn't get back to the sort of cheery stuff that I usually wrote about, but I'm getting back to it now.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that vaccinations.
I kept telling myself, you are so lucky. You've got all this extra time when you don't have to do anything else. When you're in the house, you can't go anywhere. You should just get ahead with everything. But I find it was like this weight on your shoulders all the time, just this sort of little whisper in the background saying, you can never make a mistake. If you go out and you get too close to the wrong person, you could kill your husband. That was just sitting on your shoulders the whole year. Because it's at the beginning, when we didn't know, when they were saying, well, you could touch a surface and you could catch COVID, or you could be out for a walk on a path and someone on a bicycle could go past and his breath could come back to you. It's like all these days, there was so much danger. It was just trying to keep danger at bay the whole time that used so much energy. So I found it really hard to be creative and really hard to be optimistic. And both of those things you need to be if you're going to write a good book.
Absolutely.
So I've now been fully vaccinated, which is fabulous, because I'm being careful still, but I can hug my kids, my grandkids. I can go out and sit at a patio and have lunch with a friend. So all these little steps forward, it just feels so wonderful. And I'm looking forward, hopefully, to traveling next year. That's when life, I just want life to get back to normal, but I think we can't step ahead of ourselves, because we know that India is still, in a terrible state. What if they have a variant that the vaccine doesn't work on or something? There's all these little all the time.
So many unknowns. Yeah, so many unknowns.
There are.
Yeah, I envy you that freedom that you're feeling now, because we're still very seriously in lockdown here in Ontario, and our vaccinations have been rolling out very slowly. So my husband and I have had our first shot, but
Yeah.
Things are still very much in a controlled situation at the moment, and we just have to, listen to the experts, and even though we don't want to do all the things that perhaps they're suggesting, we just have to, because it's such a serious thing. But on the other hand, throughout all this, there are all your wonderful books that are out there for people to read, and as you say, create a diversion and take them somewhere that they haven't been before. And that's a good feeling to know that you have those out there. I wanted to, before I forget, I just want everybody to see that beautiful hardcover copy of your book that you have.
This is one thing that Lake Union does that's special. Look at this. This is the Venice sketchbook, the cover. Now we take off the dust cover, and voila! What is that, my dears? We're looking at a sketch of Venice that I did. It was when I was first doing the books, I sent to Danielle, I said, these are some of the sketches I did when you're in Venice, if you want to use them for promotion. I had no idea that she was actually going to use it on the cover. Isn't that fabulous?
It's just absolutely wonderful. And what a special gift you have for not only writing your books, but being able to create those wonderful sketches.
Well, it's something I always do when I travel. So I take my sketchbook with me everywhere. And I find a friend turned me on to this years ago. He had been to Japan, and he came back with these sketches, and he really was a terribly bad artist. I saw how he brought everything to life. And I started doing this, and I realized, you know exactly where you were when you did that sketch. You know, when I look at the sketch, I can picture where I was sitting and what happened, much more than if you just see a photograph, because I can find pictures of St. Mark's Square everywhere, but I know when I did my own where I was. The other thing I wanted to show you is my necklace, which doesn't show as well on this as it really should in real life. It's Murano glass bead.
Ah, yes.
One has got a little piece of gold going through it, and they're just. I love going over to Murano always, and you watch the glass blowers at work, and you know, this is my special treat to myself to
gorgeous
write a book. So
yes, absolutely, and it's so appropriate that you would have it on today too, to share with us. You know, one of the things that people learn through the Venice sketchbook too are all those extra special little aspects of Venice and the surrounding area that combine to make it just such an amazing part of the world.
Well, it's like the whole city is. Someone, one of the interviews I was doing asked, say, please talk about Venice and art. And I said, well, really, the whole city is a work of art. It's just, it's a complete work of art everywhere. Anywhere you look at a special arched window, or just little steps leading down to a canal with a gondola tied up. Just every corner takes your breath away. And I have been, you know, probably 10, 15 times to Venice. It takes my breath away every time I'm there. I just stand and go, you know, it's
exactly.
It's magic. It really is.
It's a visual feast. And I've been a photographer all my life. And the 1 week that we spent in Venice, I just wandered everywhere in all the back streets and took so many photos. I just couldn't help myself. And I think that's part of the allure of Venice for people.
Well, share your photos with us.
Okay, I'll pop a few on now. And if you want to just make a comment about something, some detail or whatever. Okay, that's great. So these photos are going to pop up in front of us, but everybody will be able to see them.
Well, everybody knows that that's the Grand Canal. For once, it's miraculously empty. I think most of the time, if you go up and down the Grand Canal, you will have zillions of tourist gondolas coming up and down now, and the water buses, the Vaporetti, be trying to negotiate in between them, and it really is very busy usually. So
exactly. I may have a picture of the Vaporetti. I know I put one. Let's see if it's here. No, it's not there, but there's the Rialto.
Looking down the other direction from, I think, the same place, and that's the Rialto Bridge. and you can see a Vaporetto just going under the bridge. And yeah, that's one of the Vaporetto stops right next to Rialto there. And gondolas, of course, these days, one of the things with Venice is the cruise ships, which are an absolute menace, I have to say. When we were there the last time, there was one day where there were 6 cruise ships in. Now you imagine all those people, they all head straight for St. Mark's and they all ride a gondola. So it's great for tourism, I think, but it certainly spoils the feeling of Venice and all those people, damaging, probably walking on all the pavements and things.
Well, exactly. And I noticed when we were there 3 years ago, another thing that was new, there were railings on many of the bridges.
Yes.
To help people. And they weren't the beautiful, artistic railings that you might have seen.
Yeah.
And there were, to get into the Basilica, there were, you had to pass through a security checkpoint.
Yeah. Oh, and there are lines and lines and lines to get into St. Mark's, which is, I've been to Europe all my life. And in the old days, you'd wander into St. Peter's in Rome and you'd just stand there and admire everything. And a few more people would pass you. Now it's these giant tour groups that sort of surge through everywhere and you have to go through security. It's taken the joy out of everything, really, I suppose.
It's hard to find the joy, isn't it? But we must, because we mustn't let us stop traveling. And I know even 3 years ago when the crowds were so big, try to get a shot of the Bridge of Sighs and there'd be, 100 people jammed in front of you on that little space.
Yeah.
So you get up very early in the morning.
Yeah.
And get out there before those ships unload their passengers. And
well, the other thing too is if all the cruise ships, most people on them go back for dinner on the ship because they paid for their dinner on the ship. So they go back by about 4 o'clock. So by the time, we eat fairly late there. If we go out to dinner at 7:30 or 8, you can pretty much have the place to yourself, which is nice.
Absolutely. But that was another aspect that I read about. One of the issues with Venice is that all these people are coming and tromping through and not spending much money.
No.
And they were thinking of actually considering having a fee to get into.
I think they've, obviously it's on hold for now, but I think it was like a $20 per person tax to go to Venice. Yeah.
Yeah, absolute necessity.
I think they're also trying to make the cruise ships dock further away and bring them around in smaller boats, because if you see those cruise ships now, they come up the Giudecca Canal and they go past St. Mark's. They're right there. They're right in your face.
It just shouldn't be.
No.
Anyway, here's a shot of the Danieli where Julia was taken by the charming Leonardo that she met.
Yeah. It used to be a palace, and of course now it's a really nice hotel.
Yes, so, beautiful. And this was the view from the terrace.
Yeah, this is where Juliet has dinner with a certain special guy.
Yes,
it's probably her best night in Venice.
Indeed. And this is a view looking straight across from there.
Yeah.
With all the gondolas lined up. Yeah, it certainly is a magical place.
Yeah.
Now, I recently also read The Tuscan Child and loved it as well. And would you say that you have a favorite place in Italy, or is it just the entire country that has so much to offer? And
well, there are several places that, like Venice, take my breath. Obviously, Venice would be in that list. I love Tuscany, and I love just driving through those little hill towns. I've taught this workshop in Tuscany a couple of summers, and we've been in a small hill town in Chianti where life is just as it always was. Really, there's a lovely, like the market. You can walk through the market and pick up the zucchini blossoms and things. I'm very fond of Santa Margherita. Which is next to Portofino, and you look all the way down that coast.
Yes.
That's a beautiful spot. I'm also very fond of the lakes. I've stayed in Stresa one year on Lake Maggiore, and I've strayed in Varenna on Lake Como, and they are both they're again, they're places that take your breath away. You look up and down that lake, and you've got the blue water, and then the hills, and then the snow on the mountains behind. I mean, it's they're all magical spots. Just and you know, I suppose why I love Italy so much is little things about Italy. One year when I was in Venice with my oldest daughter, in those days we didn't have much money. We were staying at a little locanda on one of the very back canals.
Mm-hmm.
Late that night, we had the windows open because I'm sure it didn't have air conditioning either. And we heard this song, and someone is singing opera, and it was gorgeous. And we went out to the window and looked, and a man is just walking along the footpath opposite, entirely on his own, late at night, and he's singing opera. There's no one listening to him, and it's echoing back from those tall buildings, and you think, this is why this place is so magical, because people can do that. And it's natural for them to sing, and it's natural for them to have, you know, to have these wonderful get-togethers where everybody sits and eats. And I don't know if you've ever noticed Italian men, when they talk, they always look as if they're about to break out into a fight. They're standing there and go, hey, e come stai? No. They're just probably just saying, do you want to come for a cup of coffee? But that's what it always looks like.
That's so true. I can remember going into little restaurants where there were great tables filled with what looked like family members, and everyone's talking at once and gesturing, and the noise is incredible. And they're just having a wonderful time. But you'd think everybody was arguing with everybody else. It's such an expressive language.
You just get the feeling anywhere that you are alive.
Yes.
You know, that this is life, and it's meant to be lived. You know, you go into a restaurant in North America, and there's this gentle murmur of conversation, maybe, and it's almost silent, and you speak in whispers because you don't want to be the one who's loud. But you go to a restaurant in Italy, and everybody's talking and laughing and eating, and they're enjoying themselves. And that's what I feel we lack over here. We lack that joie de vivre.
Yes, exactly. It's something natural. It's not forced. It's just the way life is.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful to experience it. And it's wonderful to experience it through your books.
Thank you.
So thank you from me and from all your readers too, I'm sure. And we have a couple of other questions here that I'm just now... we have the wonderful Aspasia Cat, the librarian from New York City, and who has previously said how much she loves your books.
Yes.
And now she's asking when the next Lady Georgie novel is coming out.
Yeah. Oh, well, Aspasia, it's coming out next October. And I was asked to write another Christmas book because obviously you've read the 12 Clues of Christmas, which did rather well. So they wanted another one. And this one is called God Rest Ye Royal Gentlemen. And it takes place at the Sandringham estate when the royal family is present for Christmas. So it's going to be the lovely traditional English Christmas with all the trimmings, but with a few bodies too.
I guess there always have to be a few bodies in those books.
Yes.
And someone else is asking about your next work, which you have alluded to. Is there something more you might tell us about it?
I'm just finishing up the first draft on next year's standalone novel. And again, it's something in World War II. I suppose, you know, someone was asking me on one of these, I've done like a Zoom a day for the past month. So I can't switch. But someone was asking me why World War II is so popular. And I suppose absolutely now you could say, this is the first time in our lives that we have lived with constant danger. And so we can now better understand what it was like to be in World War II when you could be bombed or when you were occupied. So we have a great affinity now for World War II, I think. And the other thing too is that after the war, all the books that came out about the war were about the heroism of men. And just recently, I think since people were allowed to talk about it since the Official Secrets Act was released.
Mm-hmm.
People can say what they did. We're now learning about the heroism of women. And we're learning about all the wonderful things that they did. You know, the women at Bletchley Park who sat up all night helping to solve the codes, and about the young women who were parachuted into France and who rode on their bicycles past the German troops with a radio in their basket.
Mm-hmm.
The survival rate was 25%. So they knew when they were dropped in that their chances of surviving were so small. Anyway, this next book takes place in England, and it's rather different from the others. I have a Cockney heroine. She's an uneducated woman who would love something better for her life, but has never been given the chance. And her house is bombed, and she's buried alive, and she's almost dies. Luckily, they get her out, but she's quite badly wounded. And so they send her out to be evacuated to the countryside. And she's sent to Lincolnshire, and the place where she's sent is very close to a bomber base. And every night these giant planes take off and they fly to Germany. And every morning, half of them don't come back. So it's a place where you know that life is very precious. And I'm not going to say what she does, because that's the whole point of the story. But
Mm-hmm.
she makes a new life for herself here in this place. When she's going to meet people who may not come back in the morning. So I wanted to show this is what it was like in England. You know, first of all, in London, when people were literally bombed every night, and then even out in the countryside where life was very precarious.
It sounds gripping already.
Yeah.
I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, it does have a title, but I can't tell you yet.
Okay. And we'll look forward to hearing that. And just your comment now about people in England during the Blitz and what they had to put up with during the war. During this pandemic, when people were saying, oh, I'm so tired of doing this and I don't want to do this anymore, you know, stay in and wear a mask and, you know, socially distance, and I'm just sick of it. And someone commented at some point, imagine if the people in London in the middle of the Blitz had said, oh, I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this anymore. You know, I'm not putting my blackout curtains up and going into bomb shelters. I mean, we're living through a war of sorts. And we have to do everything we can to fight it.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that the Allies were so successful during World War II, is they realized that this was good versus evil. And if everybody didn't do their part, evil was going to win. And so everybody had this sense of purpose that, you know, I am going to make sure I do my share. I'm going to make sure my blackout curtains are closed every night. I'm going to make sure I save everything I can for the metal drive, the scrap metal drive, the pig food drive, all of these things. You know, people did their books to be torn up for the paper drive. People gave everything they possibly could. Of course, there were a few who profited from it, and that would be the same in any situation.
Exactly.
You have people now who are trying to sell fake vaccines. You have people who are going to break the rules, but most people had a sense of purpose. And you were saying about that people were saying, oh, I'm fed up. No one can make me wear a mask because it's my personal choice. My husband has carried a stick when we walked because I have attacked people. I mean, I've been up to people and say, excuse me, you need to put your mask on. And if they say it's my right not to, then I say, well, okay, yes, you're right. It is your right not to, but it's my right to stay alive. But you need to stay well away from me, and you need to hold your breath. So, and John's terrified I was going to be attacked, but I just felt it was, this is something we all have to do, and it's not your right to. If you live in a society, you have to abide by the rules of that society. That's my thought.
Indeed. Yeah. And, you know, I think getting back to your stories that talk about World War II and share the history of those times, you really bring that commitment and that, the belief in the values of the time.
Yes.
You really share those messages. And I think that there are so many, in the later generations who really don't know a lot about those World War II days. And so to have all these fabulous novels that are, really quite popular right now, coming out, as you say, after the Official Secrets Act was opened and more information was allowed to come out. I think it's wonderful that you're telling these stories and sharing those.
Well, I think it's very important, don't you? I mean, I think that's one of the driving forces behind me, is when you realize that you now have a generation. Did I read that 30% of people in America don't believe the Holocaust existed? And as a generation growing up who know nothing of World War II,
Yes.
It's like, oh, that's ancient history, really. It's important that we keep that alive. Obviously, the last people who are living through it are now dying. So you won't have any people who can tell their personal stories anymore. So you have to keep it alive through books, saying this is what it was like.
That's right. And you managed to strike a wonderful balance by sharing that information through so many of your books, even the ones that aren't serious books. You still managed to weave in all of that important history. And we're just so glad that you do, and I hope that you keep on writing. We'll look forward to your next novel, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat here today, Rhys. It's really been a pleasure.
Well, thank you for taking your time too. It's lovely to talk to you, even if it's at distance. But
exactly, yeah, we have to be satisfied with this at the moment, but one of these days, maybe in person.
Yeah, let's another convention in the future when we can all hug each other again.
There you go. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
So I wish you well, and I wish you the best of luck with the rest of your writing schedules, and I hope you get to take some time off to enjoy yourself as well. Not that you don't enjoy writing, but those other parts of life.
Well, I'm just looking forward to traveling again sometime. I know you are too.
Yes.
Finally get on a plane without being worried and get off somewhere and go, I'm back in France, I'm back in Italy,
Won't that be wonderful? Yeah. So we'll look forward to that day.
Yeah, we will.
All right. Thanks again, Rhys.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thanks for watching today. Love you all.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks everyone for watching.
Stay safe, everybody.
Exactly. Bye now.
Bye.